Gun staff had welded up a special safe for it to be transported in. This was in turn packed in a cardboard box and especially driven to a German air freight company next to the Brisbane airport. The key to the safe was sent separately by registered post. The staff member who took charge of the packaging was incredulous that we would send a shotgun worth $50,000 to people on the other side of the world that we did not know, and expect it to come back to us. Of course, that young man knew nothing of the history of Krieghoff. Krieghoff had a long and distinguished reputation to safeguard. They regularly shipped expensive firearms all over the world. The original company was founded in 1886 in Suhl. Suhl, Thuringia, in northeastern Germany, was selected by Ludwig as it was already known as a centre or hub of firearms parts manufacturing, so valuable resources such as power, steel and tooling were easily available. It was already home of other world-famous firearm producers like Saw and Son, Simpson and Merkel. The Krieghoff in the Owen Guns Trust collection is rather plain, even though it has some classical hand engraving on the receiver. It is positively unadorned in comparison with the guns that the company has made for every royal hunting lodge in Europe, from Kaiser Wilhelm II to King George V, and Hermann Goering and Adolf Hitler. The Krieghoff name never had the snob and price appeal that kept the British gun-making art in fine fettle, but throughout the 20th century earned the reputation as a first-class gunmaker who always uses the highest quality walnut and the superb engraving on the receivers that has always indicated the buyer's interest and willingness to pay for the extra weeks, days or months of hard work. Adolf Hitler's Krieghoff, for example, was manufactured in 1931, this being before he was elected to office in 1933, 5 years or so after Lieutenant Colonel May's gun had been collected. The serial number on Hitler's gun is 15450 and Lieutenant Colonel May's gun is 13537. 1,913 guns have been made in the years between them. The number 15450 on Hitler's gun identifies the gun as having been originally proved in 1931 and likely stored by the company before later engraving for presentation. This particular model is called the Neptune and is covered by elaborate engravings done by the master engraver of the time. On either side of the receivers is covered in its entirety by high relief engravings depicting the woodlands with deer and stag. Most interestingly, for the history zealots, the bottom of the trigger guard is engraved with Hitler's initials, AH.
On the collapse of Germany in 1945, all of Suhl's firearm producing factories were immediately occupied by American troops, Krieghoff among them. It was determined that the Krieghoffs were not dedicated Nazis and were allowed to relocate in Ulm in the western part of Germany. Those of us who love firearms have to thank the Americans, as they took 3 large gun manufacturers to the new gun-making center, the new firearm hub in Ulm. Krieghoff created its own proof house and was later joined by the Walther and Anschutz companies. Heinrich Krieghoff, with the help of his son Heinz, ceased the production of military models and limited their production to hunting and sporting guns. With the help of some of the former skilled employees, they reintroduced the familiar pre-war models that had originally been made in Suhl. But the competition made it necessary to work with the new technology, new machinery and materials to minimize much of the old expensive handwork. So Krieghoff developed the K32 over and under, which has some of the same similar hookless features as the Owen Guns Krieghoff. This made it sleek to hold and also uses some basic ideas from the Remington Model 32 under and over, which was introduced in 1932 and ceased manufacture in 1944. Krieghoff used finer tolerances and an improved trigger. The model K32 Krieghoff became very successful during the 1960s, especially when Kenneth A. Jones, using a K32, won the Trap Shooting World Championships in 1966. At the end of the 1970s, young Dieter Krieghoff emigrated to the USA and successfully marketed the K32 and its latest successor, the K80, to lead the American clay target shooting market for Krieghoff.
Approximately 6 long months after dispatch, we received word from the shipping agent that our Krieghoff had returned. With great anticipation, Ron drove down to Brisbane to collect it. When it returned, we were all very impressed, as it looked like an almost new one. Except for very light pitting on the left-hand side of the receiver, it was perfect. But no report as to its history, so Ron sent an email to inform Krieghoff of the safe return of their shotgun.
Dear Michael, we have received the Krieghoff back to Gympie. It took a little time with customs and we were a few days after collecting it in Brisbane from the shipping company. Please convey my thanks to your director and everyone concerned with its passage and improvements. We are very pleased with it and have it on display in one of our glass cabinets in the showroom. Hopefully it might attract some extra business for your company. Do you have a copy of your logo that we could display with it, as it needs a bit of colour and a name? When we communicated initially, you mentioned that I might be able to get a copy of your report and archive material, as we are still trying to ascertain that Lieutenant Colonel H. May designed this firearm himself, or if Krieghoff designed it, and how many were produced. We have never seen anything like it, but we are on the other side of the world. Hope you can help. Ron Owen.
Dear Mr. Owen, that is good news. Please note that you will receive a copy of the patented system for the shotgun. Semper and Krieghoff have patented and invented the shotgun without underlock in 1928. This has been documented under patent number 496390. So far, do we know from about 10 shotguns which have been produced in that way. You are the lucky owner, as well as Dieter Krieghoff, and we in Ulm have one. The others are not known, since after the war all documentation had been lost or destroyed. Out of our knowledge, you could be sure that Lieutenant Colonel H. May was one of the owners. The shotgun was designed and built by Krieghoff. He was a customer, but is not written down as designer, etc. I will forward a copy of the patent writing dated 22nd April 1930 to your attention via mail today. We are all very satisfied that you have received your shotgun back in good order, and thank you very much for your support all the way. Mit freundlichem Gruß und Weidmanns Heil. Best regards, Michael Steinmetz.
We were pleased to learn that our Krieghoff is one of only 3 remaining in the world. But at first reading of this, we presumed that was the end of the mystery. Lieutenant Colonel May had not designed the shotgun. But on perusal of the patent number 496390 that was applied for on the 28th of March in 1928 and then granted on the 3rd of April in 1930, the only novelty or innovation claims that the patents grant is the strange expanding and contracting breech block that locks the lower part of the action into the lower barrel, giving additional strength and replacing the need for the lower locking lugs, which are the bulky necessity built into every one of the modern under-over break action shotguns. Obviously, this is the first hookless action that Heinrich Krieghoff patented and is an important part of the Krieghoff history. But the patent, nor the information from Michael Steinmetz, explains the rest of the story of this historic shotgun. Michael informs us that 10 pieces were manufactured that would have had to have been prior to March of 1928. To make 10 firearms, they would have to be handmade and hand-fitted, as no factory could afford to manufacture mass production tooling to make only 10 firearms. These 10 prototypes would have taken over a year to make, and even longer to prepare the patent applications. Michael also confirms that Lieutenant Colonel May was a customer for one of those 10, but only has on record 2 other of those shotguns, one at the Ulm factory and the other with Dieter Krieghoff at the New York office. The question we have to ask is, why is it so important that they keep one of those shotguns at the Ulm factory and the other one in New York? And why were they so keen to get this one back to Germany for photographs and measurements?
For those answers, we have to go back in time to prior to 1928 and investigate which shotguns were available then. There were lever actions, pump actions, and John Browning had designed the first semi-automatic A5 shotgun in 1898. The side-by-side double reigned supreme due to it being the first repeating shotgun that could easily accept percussion caps, first with the side lock and then later with box locks. All were developed utilizing the same basic break barrel system, allowing a long barrel, short, light, compact action that would point well at fast-moving targets. The side-by-side guns was popular due to the difficulty in devising an ignition system in a short action which allowed for the long, pointable barrel configuration. It was only after hammers, tumblers and strikers had moved inside the shotgun receiver frame that it became possible to devise a good hammerless side-by-side, and much later again before an idea was conceived to encompass the internal hammers and tumblers into an over and under shotgun, and even then there were huge difficulties. Firearm designers made many under and over prototypes, but for years suffered from hangfires, misfires, or poor trigger pull performance. John Browning began designing the well-known superposed over and under shotgun in 1922. It was the last firearm he designed, as John Browning passed away in November 1926, before completing the final design of the gun. In particular, the single selective trigger mechanism that he wanted for the superposed had not been finished, and it was left for his son Val to finish and perfect in the following years. His gun was painted in 1931 and manufactured by Fabrique Nationale and was sold for the first time in 1932. Browning's son Val kept working on the single selective trigger design, which he finally perfected and incorporated in 1939. The Remington Model 32, designed by C.C. Loomis, was also released during 1932. Both of these guns have always been considered the first internal hammer cartridge guns to use the over and under concept, but of course, Lieutenant Colonel May over and under gun predates all of these by at least 5 years, and obviously was one of those 10 prototypes which ultimately spawned the Krieghoff Model K32 and the latest K80.